The year is 1992. The city Los Angeles, a metropolis of dreams, a mosaic of cultures. But beneath the glitz and glamour, a simmering rage festers. Decades of racial tension, economic inequality, and police brutality have pushed communities to the brink. Then a spark. A videotape surfaces capturing the brutal beating of Rodney King, an unarmed black man, by Los Angeles Police Department officers. This act of violence, broadcast on television screens across the nation, ignites a powder keg of anger and frustration. Los Angeles explodes. For 6 days and nights, the City of Angels is consumed by riots. Fires rage, buildings crumble, and the streets become battlegrounds. More than 60 people lose their lives. Thousands are injured. Billions of dollars in property damage scar the landscape. The riots expose the deep-seated racial and social divisions that plague American society. They serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked injustice and the urgent need for dialogue, understanding, and reform. The echoes of those fiery days continue to resonate, urging us to confront the systemic issues that led to such an eruption of anger and despair. It is a story about people pushed to their limits, their voices unheard, their cries for justice ignored. To understand the eruption of 1992, we must journey back, tracing the fault lines of injustice that fractured Los Angeles. The city, for all its allure, bore the weight of a troubled past. Decades of discriminatory housing policies, economic disenfranchisement, and strained relations with law enforcement created a tinderbox of resentment, particularly within Black and Latino communities. The arrival of crack cocaine in the 80s ravaged these communities, fueling gang violence and deepening poverty. Meanwhile, the LAPD, under the leadership of Chief Daryl Gates, adopted aggressive, often heavy-handed tactics, primarily targeting minority neighborhoods. The stage was set for an explosion. 2 incidents occurring just over a year apart would provide that spark, igniting the long smoldering embers of unrest. The brutal beating of Rodney King brought to light the brutal realities of police brutality. The fatal shooting of Latasha Harlins, a young black girl by a Korean store owner, exposed the raw racial tension simmering within the city. March 3, 1991. Rodney King, a 25-year-old black man, led police on a high-speed chase through the streets of Los Angeles. When his car finally came to a stop, what unfolded shocked the nation. George Holliday, an amateur videographer, aimed his camera from his nearby balcony, capturing the horrifying scene. 4 LAPD officers, their faces contorted with rage, surrounded King, who lay prone on the ground. They rained down blow after blow, their batons thudding against his flesh. The video, grainy but undeniable, revealed the brutality inflicted upon King. The video spread like wildfire, broadcast on news channels across the country. The officers involved, Stacy Kuhn, Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, and Theodore Brasino, were indicted on charges of assault with a deadly weapon and excessive use of force. March 16, 1991. Just 2 weeks after the Rodney King beating, another tragedy unfolded, this time in South Central Los Angeles. 15-year-old Latasha Harlins, a bright and promising student, entered a Korean-owned grocery store, a bottle of orange juice in her hand. Soon, Ja Do, the store owner's wife, accused Latasha of shoplifting. A struggle ensued. Do reached for a gun, firing a single shot into the back of Latasha's head, killing her instantly. The shooting, captured on the store's security camera, sent shockwaves through the community. Do was convicted of voluntary manslaughter but received a lenient sentence: 5 years of probation, 400 hours of community service, and a $500 fine. The perception of injustice, of a life tragically cut short and undervalued, further fueled the growing anger and resentment within the black community. The Rodney King beating and the Latasha Harlins shooting became emblematic of the systemic racism and injustice that permeated Los Angeles. April 29, 1992. The tension in the air was palpable. The eyes of the nation were fixed on Simi Valley, where the jury in the Rodney King trial prepared to deliver their verdict. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, the weight of history heavy in the room. Then, the verdict came. Not guilty. On all counts, the 4 officers were acquitted. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of rage and disbelief. In South Central Los Angeles, people poured into the streets, their cries of anger echoing through the concrete canyons. What began as peaceful protests quickly escalated into chaos. The initial target was the LAPD, seen as a symbol of oppression and brutality, but soon the anger spilled over, engulfing the city in an orgy of destruction. For 6 days and nights, Los Angeles burned. The National Guard was called in, their presence a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. The city, once a beacon of hope, was now a war zone. The rioters, a diverse mix of frustrated residents, opportunistic looters, and gang members, clashed with law enforcement, their anger fueled by years of pent-up frustration and resentment. Amidst the chaos, stories of resilience and compassion emerged. Residents formed human chains to protect businesses from looters. Community leaders, desperate to quell the violence, took to the streets, urging peace and dialogue. As the sun set each day, fear descended upon the city. The streets, emptied by curfews, echoed with the sirens of emergency vehicles and the distant crackle of flames. The 1992 Los Angeles riots were not just about buildings burning and streets in chaos. They were about individuals whose lives were forever changed by the events of those 6 days. There was Elisa Harlins, Latasha's aunt, who became a tireless advocate for justice, her voice a powerful reminder of the human cost of violence and prejudice. There was Reginald Denny, a white truck driver, brutally beaten by a mob at the intersection of Florence and Normandy, his ordeal broadcast live on television, a stark illustration of the randomness of the violence. And there were countless other store owners who lost their livelihoods, families displaced from their homes, and children forever scarred by the trauma they witnessed. Their resilience, their determination to rebuild and seek justice, serves as a testament to the enduring human spirit. As the smoke cleared and the fires died down, Los Angeles was left to confront the devastation. The physical scars were evident: burned-out buildings, looted stores, and streets littered with debris. The city resembled a war zone, a stark reminder of the violence that had gripped its streets. But the damage ran far deeper than the physical. The riots exposed the deep-seated racial and social divisions that plagued the city, the simmering resentment and distrust that had festered for decades. The economic toll was staggering: billions of dollars in property damage, businesses destroyed, and jobs lost. The riots left an indelible mark on the city's psyche, a collective trauma that would take years to heal. The need for dialogue, for understanding, for addressing the root causes of the unrest was undeniable. The 1992 Los Angeles riots cast a long shadow not just over the city itself, but over the nation as a whole. They served as a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked social and economic inequality, racial injustice, and police brutality. The riots sparked a national conversation about race relations, law enforcement, and the plight of America's inner cities. In the years that followed, Los Angeles embarked on a long and arduous journey of rebuilding and reconciliation. Efforts were made to address police brutality and improve relations between law enforcement and communities of color. Programs were implemented to stimulate economic development in underserved neighborhoods. The 1992 Los Angeles riots may have faded into the annals of history, but their echoes continue to resonate today. The issues that ignited the unrest, police brutality, racial injustice, and economic inequality remain tragically relevant, sparking protests and unrest in cities across the United States. The Black Lives Matter movement, born in response to the killing of Trayvon Martin in 2012, has reignited the national conversation about race, justice, and the use of force by law enforcement. The movement's calls for police reform, accountability, and an end to systemic racism echo the demands of those who took to the streets of Los Angeles in 1992. The fight for justice and equality is a marathon, not a sprint. 30 years after the 1992 Los Angeles riots, we stand at a crossroads. The events of that tumultuous period serve as a stark reminder of the fragility of peace, the devastating consequences of unchecked injustice, and the urgent need for dialogue, understanding, and action. It is a time for reflection, for confronting uncomfortable truths about our history and ourselves. We must acknowledge the systemic racism, prejudice, and inequality that continue to plague our society. We must listen to the voices of the marginalized, the oppressed, and the unheard. We must work together to create a more just and equitable society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status. It is our duty to nurture those seeds, to learn from the mistakes of the past, and to work tirelessly to create a world where the echoes of unrest are replaced by the harmonious chorus of unity, understanding, and justice for all.